We're going to start with a 5-star recruit, Bryson Tucker. Great name, first of all, not to be confused with Bryson Tiller, who is both a musician and a basketball player as well. I can never get over that. Anytime I hear Bryson Tiller, I'm like, I want that dude on my team just so I can put a bunch of highlights up with Don't playing in the background. But long story short, Bryson Tucker is who we're talking about today. He's a 5-star who may or may not be reclassifying, which is of note, particularly to some teams that may or may not have hopes of winning a national championship this year. One of them being that team in East Lansing. Carter, I looked at his 24/7 profile because the only report I've heard was that if he were to reclassify, he might be leaning Michigan State. That came from an On3 article, and there was no other school listed in that. It was just like, hey, this might be an option, and if it's that, some people think it might be Tom Izzo. Out of nowhere, first of all. Second of all, like, who are the backups even? Like, I didn't know Michigan State was even recruiting this kid. Turns out teams like Duke, Illinois, Indiana are after this kid in his original class. Maybe or maybe not if he were to reclassify. So what do you know about Bryson Tucker? Do you like his game? And more importantly, would it be a good thing for Michigan State to add Bryson Tucker into the already crowded, talented room that they have for this season?
So I'll start with this. I'm a huge fan of Bryson Tucker's game. I think he covers all my buzzwords for kind of what I like with college basketball players. Like, Greg, you hear this a lot from me. You can confirm, like, this is what does it for me when I'm talking about college basketball prospects. He's a 3-level scorer. Okay. So he can score at the hoop. He can score mid-range, score from 3-point range as well. That's not an issue. He's a competitive as shit. He's a good defender. He's everything. Like, if Izzo could start molding a 2-guard, like, he would mold Bryson Tucker. And I think that Bryson Tucker is going to find himself in the NBA whenever he decides to go. Like, he's an NBA level player, first round draft pick type talent. With that said, we don't want to overthink this. I hate people who overthink this. Like, if a 5-star kid wants to come play for your program, you say yes. I don't care. If you have the scholarship open, I don't care who's on the team. You take them, you put them on the team. With that said, for everything that I've heard, Bryson Tucker is a guy who's very solely focused on getting to the league. Like, he wants to get to the NBA. So I could see a world where if he did reclassify, like, maybe he pulls like a Shaden Sharp. Maybe he reclasses, just goes, works out with Michigan State's team, practices, probably gets stronger, works on his game, and then declares for the draft. I don't know if he'll be as high as a draft pick as Shaden Sharp was, but I could see him doing that. But from everything I'm hearing, and it's been a very strange recruitment for him as well, like, whenever you ask around about him, people don't really know what's going on or where he's leaning. It's either going to be like one of the professional routes, overtime, elite, something like that, or Michigan State. That's how it was originally before the reclass rumors came about. But I don't know if there'd be minutes for Bryson Tucker on this team, to be honest, with how crowded the backcourt is.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued because everything you're saying and everything the reports are saying about what he wants and how he's wired and this 5-star kid with dreams of the league, all that's great standalone and makes sense based on who he is. He's a talented kid. I don't know how any of that squares with the best option for me is to reclassify a year and play for Michigan State right now. Like, it might make sense for Tom Izzo. It would make the team more talented, but like you said, how does this kid go 1-0 and get to the league on a team that has Walker, Akins, Hoggard, Fierce? Yeah. I'm baffled by that.
Well, I'm not I wasn't too buying in. It's like, it makes no sense for him to reclass and go to Michigan State this year, except for the fact that he does love Tom Izzo a lot. His family loves Tom Izzo. If I somehow actually someone sent it to me, I stumbled upon his dad's Twitter likes. Every single tweet is either his son's highlights or Michigan State stuff, like Tom Izzo, videos and all this stuff. And they just seem to be huge fans of Michigan State. And when you look at the On3 percentage leans, I think Michigan State was at 87% as a lean for him. So it might just be one of those cases where he's just buying into the, being a Spartan dog, woof, woof. Doesn't matter about the minutes.
Yeah, listen, that stuff's real. I mean, this would kind of be, I don't know. I'm thinking this through out loud right now. So excuse me if this thought isn't like fully put together, but like I think Izzo deserves a ton of credit for getting this year's roster to the point that it is, because it really took a ton of individual decisions from kids that kind of went against the natural line of thinking in order to get this roster to the point where it's so loaded. And what I mean by that is like he had to recruit Akins back and keep him happy, knowing he's going to be that third guard. He had to recruit Hogard back to an extent. Like there was a chance Hogard left. He had to recruit Walker back for the extra year. He had to recruit Xavier Booker. And at the time, like I was joking about it because he didn't have the rest of this special class when he was all in on Xavier Booker. It was Xavier Booker bust. Turns out he was able to convince a kid that everyone says has motor issues to play for the number one coach in the country who won't tolerate motor issues. Like he's kind of beaten all of the skeptics on all of these individual decisions one by one that has now lined up this uber talented team that is the best one and the deepest one Izzo's had in 6 years.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it would almost make sense if the feather on the cap was one extra 5-star kid who wants to be a one and done at a position there is no time for on this Michigan State roster. But like, I won't put it past Tom Izzo anymore because I've doubted Tom Izzo one too many times this year, and he just keeps making me look stupid every single time.
Yeah, even like I guess somehow turned into like an Izzo love session segment, but like even when Michigan State missed out on Devin Royal, when Devin Royal was almost set to be a lock, and it was actually it was a lock, and then it was between Michigan State, then Ohio State showed themselves, and it was like Michigan State, Ohio State. Thought we were going to get him, and then he pivots and brings in Cohen Carr. Like obviously losing Devin Royal, I think Devin Royal is going to be great at Ohio State. Don't get me wrong, I would still love to have him at Michigan State, but his ability to like even pivot off his misses, it's just the dude's just beating the odds right now, and he's beating all the allegations that the NIL would just like eat him up.
Yeah, he's in his bag. Last, I guess, more specific to Bryson. I'm skeptical of reclassifying kids in general. I just think like more often than not that ends up in disaster than it does a kid shows up and is great and it works.
His profile doesn't really strike me as like reclass. Like if a guy's reclassing and he's like physically ready, like he's physically imposing, it makes it a little bit easier for me. I guess it would be like reclassing guards usually doesn't pan out too well.
Yeah, I think Ant did something like with actual numbers in a study on this a couple years ago of like, let's look at all the reclassifying point guards, and it failed. Now, Bryson's not a pure point to me. He's more of a shooting guard, combo guard, whatever you want to call him. He's big. He's 6'6". He has height. But there's still like, there's not playing time available. And maybe he would be good enough. He cuts into it. I'm not saying he wouldn't play at all. He would come off the bench, but that just is such a different role than what a kid who is trying to get to the league as quickly as possible, is adamant he's a one and done, would typically want. So I don't know. I think he's got the game. I don't think he would be a top 5 player on Michigan State next year, partially because I think Michigan State's really, really good. But as much as like this might be a really flashy ad, I don't think it's one Michigan State really needs. So I don't know. Like it's kind of one of those things where like if it happens, then great for Tom Izzo. He did it again. If it doesn't happen, great for Tom Izzo. He avoided a potential disaster to the locker room, you know?
It would solidify it as the greatest recruiting class in Michigan State history, though, right?
You think so?
Fears, Carr, Booker, and Tucker.
I don't think that beats redacted Langford, Winston.
True. Yep. Was there a fourth in that class?
There was a fourth. Who was it? Nick Ward.
Yep. That was a great class.
Who arguably at the time, Nick Ward, like for half his freshman year, was the best player out of that group. Like it was crazy. I know his career didn't end great, but yeah, it would have an argument though. You can make an argument if you want to. We'll see what happens with Bryson Tucker. We'll see what happens with Michigan State. But man, am I terrified of Tom Izzo right now. I say that genuinely as I wear a shirt that says admissions on it.